everybody, welcome back. I haven't made a video in a little bit. We took a bit of a break, just because things got hectic for a little while, but we are back. It is November. The bug is right there, so if things start moving. Oh, good reach. Good try, good try. But it is November, and November is National Adoption Awareness Month, I think is what it is. Yeah, I know. Is I think what it's called. And so I want to, I asked on Instagram a couple weeks ago about questions you had about our specific adoption and had some really good questions. So I'm going to answer them today. The first thing I'm going to say before I answer any of these questions is that as an adoptive parent, I believe and I recognize my story is the least important in our adoption story. That me and Kyle's perspective is the least important. And so I encourage you that if you're watching this, that's great. I'm so happy you're watching this, but don't let this be the only learning you do about adoption. Really focus on things from adoptees and first families. And I also want to be super clear that I will only answer questions that I can answer from me and Kyle's perspective. I don't want to answer any questions about George's perspective because I don't know George's perspective yet. And also I will never ever answer any questions that talk about his first family story because that's not my story to tell. So I will only be answering, because a lot of the questions I can't really answer without assuming how other people feel about stuff, and I don't want to do that. So I will be answering the questions about our specific adoption that I can answer from me and Kyle's specific perspective, which again is the least important. So yeah, just keep that in mind to listen to more than an adoptive parent during Adoption Awareness Month. In fact, ours is for sure, of the three, of the triad of adoptee, adoptive parents, and first families, the adoptive parent perspective is by far the least important to listen to. So just keep that in mind. But I'm glad you're here, and I'm glad I'm making this video because I can't wait to see what I will feel about these questions in like a year when I watch. So let's get started. Okie dokie. First question. Let's find it. The first question. Oh, this was a super commonly asked one. Hey, Buggy, can you get a book? The first question is a super commonly asked question, and that is our adoption an open adoption? We do have an open adoption. Something that I didn't know beforehand, so I don't know if other people would know, is that open adoptions can look like a lot of things. It's kind of a spectrum. So open adoptions can look like just pictures and letters, sometimes through the agency, so there's no direct contact. Open adoption can look like them coming over for birthday parties. You know what I mean? Like it can kind of be, there's on either end of that. Ours is open. I don't want to go into too many details about how open ours is. But one thing I do want to say is that we love to have an open adoption. It is something that I think is going to be so beneficial to George. I have never been scared of an open adoption. That was never something that me and Kyle had any concerns about, which surprises a lot of people. But in my mind, when we adopted George, our family grew by more than just George. And so we love his first family very much. And yes, we do have contact with them. Who wanted to adopt first, me or Kyle? That's a super good question. Me and Kyle both knew that we wanted to adopt. Our plan was always to have biological children and then adopt. It was me that came forward and said I would love to discuss having an adoption be the way that we grow our family. And we talked a lot about it. We thought a lot about it. It was, it was something that we both wanted, so it wasn't necessarily like me having to convince Kyle to adopt. And it was not something that he needed a lot of time to consider because it was already in our plans. The only thing that was different from our original plan was that we adopted first, and it was me that brought it up to Kyle, but he was very open to that. So very good question. Will we tell George that he's adopted? Absolutely, we will be telling George that he's adopted. I think I made a video about this last year in November. I don't remember. Yes, the goal for us is to have George always know that he's adopted. So we want to remove the idea of like a sit-down conversation where we say, hey George, you're adopted. We just, we always want to make it a known factor in our family. And we do that by celebrating his adoption and also making sure that as he grows up, we are giving him space to hold whatever feelings he's going to feel about how he wants to. So, we are not going to ever imply that he has to feel lucky or, a lot of the things that people say to adoptive parents is like, you're so great for what you did. And And I just want to make sure that he never hears that, so that he doesn't feel indebted to us about anything. So we are going to do a lot of work to make sure that he has the tools to understand, and that he has any room to feel whatever feelings he wants to feel about it. So yeah, we will. Okay, I'm going to answer these two questions kind of together. The question is, how long was your wait and what did you have prepared? Our wait for George was, we were active on the registry for the National Down Syndrome Adoption Network for just over a week when we got matched. And then 4 days later, we checked placement. So it was, just about a week and a half, which is way faster than is normal. I want to make that super clear. That is not like the norm. Somebody asked me like the average wait time, and I don't actually know what the average wait time for an adoptive parent is, but I always kind of believe that like a long wait's okay, because that means that there's families that are working together. And so that's my personal kind of thought about it. But yeah, our wait was very, very short. So which brings us to the next question of what did we have prepared? And the answer of what did we have prepared was almost nothing. We didn't know when we were on the registry, we didn't know how long we'd be waiting. And so in the instance that we would be waiting a long time, we didn't want to get too much stuff, because we didn't know how old the baby would be, or, you know, what gender the baby would be. We didn't know anything. And also in the instance that we'd be waiting a long time, we didn't want to have a room of stuff just like sitting there making us sad. So before George came home, the only things that we purchased were a car seat, and we had bought a crib, but we never opened the crib. And so we did not have a nursery ready. We did not have, oh, we also had a cradle. Like we had like a bassinet cradle thing. But that's because my grandpa made that for me when I was born, and all of my cousins have used it. And so George was the first of the next generation to use it, which was very, very special. But, so that's really all we had. We didn't have any clothes. We didn't have any diapers. We didn't have any food. And then when we found out that we got matched with a baby across the country, what our plan originally was to fly to California with the nothing that we had and buy whatever we needed when we were there, because we also didn't know how long we were going to be in California. We were very, very lucky that George's first family gave us just about everything we needed for him. And we, you know, had access to stores if we needed anything. And then we were going to ship everything back, but luckily we didn't have to do that. We could fly home with everything. So that would be my advice, I think, is to wait till you know more about your child before you start buying anything. Don't just be prepared to be ready to get whatever you need if this is your first baby. If this is not your first baby, you might have the stuff ready anyway. We did not, because George was our first, but we had nothing prepared, just about. This is a big one. You talk a lot about how sad adoption is. Can you explain why? I will. So adoption is, again, this is the adoptive parent perspective. You should definitely be listening to adoptees and first families talk about this. So this is just my perspective, but what, in my mind, what is true is that adoption is born from loss. Adoption is born from sadness and brokenness. There is no situation where an adoption is only joyful. There is just not. And if you see and hear people pretending that that is the case, they're not honoring the loss that especially the adoptee has gone through. You know, there is something to be said about even a newborn not being with the mother that they heard for 9 months and knew, you know, there's sadness there. And the reality is that in a perfect world, George wouldn't need to be in our family. That's just not the world we exist in. The circumstances were very specific, and he is very loved, and that's ultimately what matters. But, you know, George was not born to me, and in most situations, a child that is born to a mother stays with that mother. And that's a huge responsibility to hold. And I don't let that feel sad to me anymore. Like, I'm not sad by the fact that George is not biologically mine. I never have been sad by that. What is, like, that's not the sad part. I want to be super clear. Like, I am not sad that George is biologically not me and Kyle's. That doesn't bother me the slightest. What is sad to me is that adoption is loss. First and foremost, adoption is loss. Adoption can be other things as time goes on and as time progresses, but first and foremost, adoption is loss. When you think about the adoption triad, there's the adoptee, the first family, and the adoptive parents. And the adoptive parents are the only people who don't go through a loss. The adoptee and the adoptive parents or sorry, the adoptee and the first family, they do go through a loss. So it is sad in that way. It is not sad that it is not a situation where there, in our case, there is not a lack of love for George. That's not what makes it sad. There is not any jealousy that George shares DNA with people that aren't me and Kyle. That's not sad to us. What is sad is that there was loss very early on in his life that we honor and that we will never shy away from or hide from. What is your both favorite and least favorite thing about adoption? Great question. My least favorite thing is obviously that it is loss and it is sad. Hello, he's coming. You know, that's very, very hard and very sad. My favorite thing about adoption is that our family grew by more than George. Do you want to come sit with Mom? Our family grew by more than one when George came home. And so the way that our family expanded is something that I think is pretty fun and pretty cool. Can you say hi? Hi. Do you got to hiccups? Do you got to hiccups? Here's a good one. How often do you think about the fact that George is adopted? That's a super good question. And I never really thought about it. And I think the answer is both. I think about it a lot, and then I also forget about it a lot. I guess like it's not a situation where I'm looking at George and I'm like, oh my goodness, look at you, you look nothing like us, you don't have our eyes, you know, like I'm not like waking up and holding him and being like, this is not biologically my baby. I definitely don't think about it like that, but there are times, like certain times of day he smiles and I'm like, oh, you look like your first mom there, or you know, things like that, that I find really cool. But I also, again, like honor the fact that he's adopted, and I love that he's adopted, and I love that his first family chose us to be his parents. So it's one of those things that there's like a fine line between like, I always recognize it, but it's not by any means like the first thing I think of or the first thing that comes to mind when I look at my son. It is both an important thing and not always the priority, I guess, if that makes sense. The last question was the most asked question, and I guess it makes sense because it does have to do with our adoption story. And the question was, will me and Kyle ever adopt again? The answer is 100% yes, we will. Obviously, we don't have control of timing. You know, a lot of stuff goes on behind the scenes and stuff like this, but if the question is, will George ever have biological siblings? Who knows? Will George have adopted siblings? That's super important to me and Kyle. So yes, we will adopt again at some point. We don't know when, but we will. Right now, we are loving having our one-on-one time with the sweet bug, but our story with adoption is not over yet, for sure. Okay, and that's kind of the majority of the questions that got asked. Again, there were some other ones that I don't feel comfortable answering because they talk about stories that aren't mine. They talk about George's story. He said, where is it? Did you drop the remote? Where is it? It's over there, yeah. Again, I'm not going to answer questions that aren't my story to share. And again, I really encourage you for Adoption Awareness Month to listen to adoptees and listen to first families and, you know, hold it all with us, I guess is a really good way to phrase that. But yeah, we will make some other videos this month. The fall is just so hectic around our home, but we're working on it. So we'll be back soon. Hey, come here. But we're going to go. Can you say bye? Thank you so much for watching. We'll be back soon. Oh, he found my phone. We'll be back soon. Thank you for watching. Bye. Okay. Bye. Can you say bye-bye? Bye. Give a little kiss. Mwah. No, you're going to kiss yourself?